Greetings, students. I see you have awoken. Ready for another lecture, I see. Welcome back to the archives. I have been expecting you. Darth Plagueis was a Dark Lord of the Sith, so powerful and so wise, he could manipulate the midichlorians to create life. In the famous parable recounted to Anakin Skywalker, Palpatine recites the story and fate of his own Sith master, Darth Plagueis, one of the very few people who not only Palpatine genuinely feared, but one of our favourites to go here on the channel. Darth Plagueis is one of the most powerful and formidable Sith Lords to have ever lived, uncertainly in the top 10, and definitely perhaps in the top 5, with Darth Plagueis' manipulation of the midichlorians making him single-handedly one of the most formidable Force users ever, on par with beings such as Grandmaster Yoda, Anakin Skywalker, and even an earlier version of his own apprentice in Darth Sidious, Emperor Sheev Palpatine. Plagueis was born in the rule of two, inheriting the collective knowledge of the line descended from Darth Bane, becoming the most powerful man in that lineage until the rise of course, Sidious, and some have even argued Vader. However, as the rule of two dictates, the apprentice one day had to take out the master, as Sidious used trickery and deception in order to defeat Plagueis. Plagueis still used the Force to defeat his own master. And today, we are going to be recounting the tale of how Darth Plagueis executed his master, Darth Tenebrous. So join us, acolytes, as we venture into the deep depths of unknown space, and prepare to mine some cortosis, and on the planet of Baldemic, as we learn how truly Darth Tenebrous was killed. 67 years before the Battle of Yavin, in 67 BBY, Darth Tenebrous, the current reigning Dark Lord of the Sith, who was Darth Plagueis' master, learned of a cortosis deposit on the planet of Baldemic, an ocean world in the Outer Rim that Plagueis was very familiar with, and personally went there to survey it with his apprentice, a tread droid, and an M2 mining probe provided by Subtext Mining. What neither Tenebrous, apparently nor Plagueis were aware of, however, that the probe had been sabotaged by an unknown third party in an attempt to kill them. While the implications of this are unknown, we can accurately assume that these people either had great grief and strife with their public aliases, that being Higo Damask, the ruler of the intergalactic banking clan Damask Holdings, and a large political manipulator over the large galaxy's funds. And of course, Rugus Gnome, who was a famous starship designer who could easily build and incorporate various faults into starships if he saw fit. With subtext complicity. Inside a cave on the side of a steep escarpment on the shores of the Northern Sea, the two Sith Lords landed their vessel, a ship designed by Tenebrous himself under the guise of Rugus Gnome, and sent out to survey the cortosis vein. For those who do not know, cortosis is one of the few materials alongside Beskar that can actually block lightsabers, with cortosis being able to even short-circuit a lightsaber blade as seen when Darth Vader dueled multiple Jedi. The Jedi that Darth Vader defeated almost alternated in his death, with Darth Vader nearly being killed by the fallen Jedi, who were descended into the dark side after Order 66, due to the fact that cortosis short-circuited his lightsaber and forced him to rely on his force connection and acrobatics. Using envirosuits to protect them from the deadly heat, they ventured within the cave, surveying the cortosis deposit and vein. Tenebrous ascribed special significance to the mission, as he believed that two Sith Lords mining cortosis at the apex of the Ruler II era amounted to a closing of a circle that had begun with Darth Bane, the famed Sith Ari of legend that would later be claimed by Darth Sidious. Starting on the path towards darkness in the upper Atros cortosis mines, where he originally used the Force to kill a Republic officer in a heated game of sabacc. The Enterprise soon came to an unexpected end, however, when the droid reported that the mining probe had discovered a pocket of highly combustible variant of lethane directly between the borehole. Tenebrous commanded the droid to have the probe deactivated, but it overrided the systems, and the command was failed. The probe overrode the droid's commands. After the two Sith unsuccessfully tried to damage the probe using Force lightning, they hastened to return to the grotto where they had landed their ship, leaving the tread droid behind. Plagueis made sure, using the limited amount of compassion that he had during this time, to let it know that it had been useful and fulfilled its purpose before fleeing the site. As the Sith ran through the superheated caves of the planet, Plagueis began to notice various signs that his master was uncharacteristically distressed. Rugus Gnome or Darth Tenebrous was normally always in control of the situation, something Plagueis and Sidious would always inherit, seeming to have control over every single thing, manipulating and using a puppet master in order to manipulate every single motion of a move, very similar to Vitiate in the Echoes of Oblivion expansion edition. As if he sensed something alarming in the Force. They had just made it to the grotto near the surface when the gas explosion caught them. Tenebrous managed to use the Force to conjure a barrier of dark side energy to shield them from the fireball. Flames licked to the side of the grotto as Tenebrous desperately tried to keep the fissures of rock carving through the ceiling from collapsing down on him. He used the Force to protect the ship while also holding up a Force shield in order to sustain his burns, to not allow him to be burned. Tenebrous at this point used a respirator, something his own apprentice would later use after being attacked by Milani assassins. During this time, Tenebrous was extremely vulnerable to fire, same with Plagueis, and Tenebrous could not allow his apprentice or him to be murdered. It was then this Plagueis had the impression of hearing the Force whisper to him. The dark side in this moment had come to claim his stake. He lost no time in contemplation, no hesitation. He saw this as a sign from the Force itself. He betrayed his master by using telekinesis to bring the huge slabs and stalactites of stone down upon him using the Force. The rockfall, however, also buried and submerged their ship in molten rock, trapping them both. Racing to Tenebrous' side, Plagueis tried to comfort his master as he lived his dying moments. The Bith went along with his apprentice's charade and conferred the mantle of Sith Master to him. Plagueis, accepting responsibility for his action, informed Tenebrous that his death would mark the end of the Rule of Two, and that he would escape the grotto even without the ship, using his immensely intelligent intellect in order to escape their current situation. He then broke the Bith's neck, briefly incapacitating and paralyzing him, before Tenebrous was killed moments later. Both Plagueis and Tenebrous had waited a long time for that moment. The latter had hoped that his apprentice would have made his moves years earlier, and was happy to finally be allowed the chance to implement his secret scheme, while the former had wanted to carry out the grand plan to completion alone, not desiring an apprentice. When he saw Naboo Sheev Palpatine, who desired to be a senator, and with ambitions to become the Supreme Chancellor, he simply could not ignore his immense Force connection, without being burned with the formalities of the Bainite system. As Plagueis reached out in the Force to study Tenebrous' dying midichlorians, the maxichlorians, Tenebrous' own creation that he had engineered using Bith science, which he believed would eventually outgrow the Force, and in the end everyone would be able to form various telekinetic feats using Bith technologies and science. The maxichlorians carried the Bith's intelligence, slipping out of his body undetected and infected a wound on the mum's lower back which was saturated his skirt in blood, caused by a rock or some other stalactite and projectile. As the maxichlorian virus propagated inside Plagueis' cells, Tenebrous accessed his apprentice's powers of foresight, the powers he had to give up to himself in order to code his intelligence into the retrovirus. What he witnessed horrified him. Instead of providing access to the chosen one of myth that Tenebrous hoped to corrupt so that way he could lead the Sith in a glorious body that had an unrivaled Force connection even exceeding that of his own Plagueis, Darth Sidious, and even Emperor Valkorion himself. He saw that Plagueis would die at the hands of his own apprentice that was named the Shadow, secretly Darth Sidious, too quickly. After the retrovirus completed the task it had been engineered for, the infection of all the cells in Plagueis' body, the Martian Dark Lord lost his powers of foresight. Tenebrous, after slipping out of his apprentice's body in a swift panic, remained trapped as a disembodied essence in the cave, reliving his own death for eternity. Well, my friends, what do you think of this video on the brutal way that Darth Plagueis ended the Rule of Two? Of course, he would go on to train Darth Sidious, one of, if not the most powerful Sith Lord to have ever lived, and eventually would go on to be murdered by this same apprentice. As we have covered previously here on the channel, if you would like to know how Plagueis died, you would go and see the video why Darth Plagueis' death is far more brutal than you realize. Goodbye, my friends. This is where we part ways. I'll see you in the galaxy far, far away. And remember, you learnt today on the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise.